Today we are going to talk about zero and negative exponents. Zero exponents we should have no problem with. Negative exponents, on the other hand, are a lot more confusing than what we have been doing. So make sure that you pay careful attention, especially when we get to the negative exponents. Okay? First thing that we know is that anything to the zero power is 1. Okay, so if I take 4 to the 0 power, I'm going to get 1. If I take 5 to the 0 power, I'm going to get 1. So 5 to the 0 power on here, okay, is going to give us 1. Okay, negative 2 to the 0 power is going to give us 1. 1/9 to the 0 power, what do you suppose we're going to get? 1. Okay, the only time that they're going to try to trick you is if it's 0 to the 0 power, we're still going to get 0. Okay, but that's the only time that it's not 1, is if that number is a 0. Okay, so if I have 2 to the 3rd here, I get 8 times, what's 2 to the 0 power? Well, 2 to the 0 power is 1, so 8 times 1 is going to be 8. Okay, negative exponents are a little bit different. We don't like to have negative exponents. So what's going to happen when we have a negative exponent is what we're going to talk about right now. Okay, if I have a number to the negative exponent, okay, I have to put it into the denominator of my fraction. Okay, so if I have, let's say I have 4 to the negative 2 exponent, and I want to change that, okay, into a positive exponent, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 1 over, and then I'm going to go 4, and then I'm going to make my exponent positive. So I'm going to go 1 over 4 squared, which is going to give me 1 over 16. Okay, so we turn that negative exponent into a fraction. Okay, so if I fill out the table here, 4 to 2 squared is 4, 2 to the first power is going to be 2, 2 to the 0, anything to the 0 power is 1, and then we go 2 to the negative 1. Now is where I have to go into my fractions. I have 1 over 2 to the first power, which is 1/2. Here I've got 1 over, I go my 2, and then I make my exponent positive, so 2 squared is going to give me 1/4. Okay, same thing here. 5 squared gives me 25. 5 to the first power gives me 5. 5 to the 0, anything to the 0 power is 1. And then we go 5 to the negative 1. So I go 1 over, and I have my 5 to the first power, which is just 5. Okay, here I've got 1 over. I take my 5. I make my exponent positive, so 1 over 5 squared, okay, gives me 1 over 25. Okay. Here we're just going to kind of evaluate what we've learned so far. So negative 8 to the 0 power, anything to the 0 power gives me a 1. Okay. 4 to the negative 2. Now we have that negative exponent where I have to make it a fraction. So I'm going to go 1 over, and then I have my 4. I've got to make my exponent positive. So 1 over 4 squared gives me 1 over 16. Okay, when I have a fraction, it really flips things around is what it does. So what I'm going to take is, this is to the negative 1, so I can take my fraction and I'm going to flip it around. So I have 2 over 1, because I flipped it, and then my exponent becomes a positive 1. So 2 to the first power is 2 over 1 is going to give me 2. Okay, 73 to the 0 power, well, anything to the 0 power is 1. 13 to the negative 2, that is the same as, we go 1 over, we've got 13, and we have to square it. Okay, so that gives me 1 over 169. Okay, sometimes they're going to kind of throw things at you where you have to take everything step by step. Here we've got 5a cubed, and that really doesn't change. So we write our 5a cubed. Okay, but then I have my b to the negative 2. So what happens is I have to throw that to the bottom, okay, and then I can make my exponent positive. So my answer to this is 5a cubed over b squared. Okay, here I have x to the negative 9. So this is where I don't have anything else that's going to be on top. So I have to put a 1 on top. Okay, so I go 1 over x, and then I take that negative exponent, that negative 9, and I make it positive. So 1 over x to the 9th. Okay, here where it's in the bottom, where it's already 1 over n to the negative 3, I'm going to take that n to the negative 3 and I'm going to move it to the top. So I end up with n, and I make that positive because it was in the bottom of my fraction. Now it goes on top. I could put this over 1, but then you would have to reduce this to just regular n over n to the third power. Okay? So moving on, my 4 doesn't have an exponent on it, so I leave it as 4. Okay? My c has a negative exponent, so I'm going to move that to the bottom and go c to the 3 on the bottom. And then my b doesn't have any exponents on it, so I'm going to leave that in the top. My answer being 4b over c cubed. Okay, my 2 doesn't have anything on it, so I leave that exactly where it's at. I don't move it. Okay, my a to the negative 3 is a negative exponent, so I've got to move that to the top of my fraction. So I end up with 2a cubed. Okay, here I've got n to the negative 5th. That's got to go to the bottom. But my m squared is already positive, so that stays where it's at. So I'm going to put a 1 on top, and then on the bottom, I'm going to have my n to the 5th, because I make my exponent positive, and m squared. Okay? Okay, things are way more confusing right now. Okay, now that we're talking about negative exponents and making them positive. So you need to make sure that you watch the next video on this, and then raise your hand if you have questions.